Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber to the Investment Forum Indonesia. My name is Untitled Chapter. I'm the Regional Director for South and Southeast Asia. And it's an honor to have with us the Director, Chairman of the Indonesia Investment and Coordinating Board, His Excellency Mr. Mahendra Sirga. A special welcome also to the Ambassador of Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Rahmat Budiman. Also would like to welcome Mr. Franz Bessig, Director General of the Austrian Federal Ministry for Science, Research and Economy. And of course, a big welcome also to the business delegation from Indonesia. Unfortunately, the weather is not that good, but I hope you have a pleasant stay in Vienna, a joyous day in Austria. What is the agenda for the day? In the morning, after the opening and keynote addresses, we're going to hear 3 presentations, which we would like to summarize on the title, How to Do Business, How to Invest in Indonesia. Then from 11 to 11:20, we have foreseen 20 minutes coffee break. After the coffee break, we're going to invite 2 Austrian companies which already invested in Indonesia to share the experience with us. And then from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we would like to invite you to the networking buffet. And 12:30, we will start with B2B meetings. Just mentioned before, we are welcoming a business delegation from Indonesia. We would like to request and to invite the Austrian companies to participate at the B2B meetings. There's no registration required. We will handle it on the first come, first served basis. The meetings are just opposite, left-hand side, 111, and you're invited to participate there. And now it's my pleasure to announce our Vice President, Mr. Josef Matznetter, requesting for his opening.
Thank you, Mr. Radnagel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The rain in Vienna is similar to this one in Jakarta, but in Jakarta it's warmer. That's a problem in countries in the Alps. So, but we hope for the next days that we, however, for you, a fruitful visit here to Austria. Austria and Indonesia, there's in the meantime a long history of traditional relationship there, and we have big and bilateral trade volume almost doubled in the last 10 years. So we see on the economic field there have been a strong and a straight development. On the political side, it was clear that Indonesia is one of the key factor countries in Southeast Asia, and it is clear that we cannot look at Asia all the time only in direction of Beijing and Shanghai or New Delhi. There is a big part of Asia with a really remarkable development, and it's the Asian group, and especially Indonesia, who has developed from a country from orientation on the agricultural producing now a big industrial country which is really one of the strong tigers of the world. And Austria, however, in the herd of Europe, with all the problems that Europe is suffering too, the last weeks and months, about the problems of the conflict on the eastern part of Europe. And yesterday it was a big conference of the social partners with the government speaking about the consequences of the strategy of the European Union and the NATO in the Russian-Ukrainian crisis and the consequences for the economic situation here in Europe. And one part of the strategies, we have to enforce the economic relationships to other countries, especially to regions in which growth is not something for the future, is something that is like there. And Indonesia so is one focus that we have done. In 2010 was the visit of our federal president Heinz Fischer in Jakarta, and we have seen this time there was a big delegation of Austrian businessmen there and a big interest for the country. And this year in May we was visiting with our Ministry for Traffic, Infrastructure and Technology with Boris in Jakarta, and there was more than 50 Austrian enterprises in the region, interested to do a stronger relationship, to invest in Indonesia, and to open this part of Asian markets. But they find there many front runners, and Austria is today present as a big investor, not even remarkable in all the statistics, because they are only formally. If a daughter company or a sister company come from another country, it's an Austrian company and an Austrian enterprise, but in the statistic, if it's through their installed entity in Hong Kong, it's a Chinese investment, but in reality it's an Austrian one. We have a big plant there in the field of producing the South Pacific viscose. Lenzing is producing in Indonesia. We have even a big bridge builder there. Even for me, what was new. More than 1,000 bridges in Indonesia are based on Austrian technology, steel bridges. So we are there on the side of bridge constructing and also tunneling and mining, every time the Austrian ones. But we have a big field of other corporations and successful corporations in the past. So the perspectives for the next years is we have to enforce this cooperation, include helping our companies to settle up in Indonesia, to use this market, well-educated people, a big growing economy, to enlarge their activity in Asia, but on the other hand also to use and to enforce the possibility to buy the goods on a high quality level today produced in Malaysia and to bring into European markets. So it will be both direction really interesting for us, and you see even in the raining morning that enough people are very interesting how to go forward in the investment and possible development of the future economic relationship with Indonesia. So I wish to this conference a successful talks, especially after the lunch break for the B2B meetings. This is one of the best frames that we can offer to make a direct contact, and hope so that in the next delegation that will do Mr. Werdnagel, there will be nearby 200 businessmen. So we have our increasing also for the interesting to see it also on the economic delegations of the Chamber of Economic in Austria. Thank you very much, and Excellence, thank you another time to make your time to offer here the possibilities in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President, for opening this very important investment forum, and we will try hard to get 200 Austrian companies. And now I would like to request the Director General, Mr. Franz Wessig, for his opening remarks.
Good morning, Mr. Vice President Matzenetta, Excellency, Mr. Sirika, Mr. Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me also to welcome you here on behalf of the Austrian Federal Ministry of Science, Research and Economy. And I would like to thank the Embassy of Indonesia and also the Austrian Economic Chamber for hosting this event today. As it has been mentioned also by Vice President Matzenetta, the long history and cooperation between Austria and Indonesia goes hand in hand with also a remarkable increase of our bilateral trade. Today, Indonesia is one of our most important export destinations in the Asian region and ranks number 3 in the ASEAN, under the ASEAN group of countries. As a result, the Austrian volume of exports reached in 2013 an all-time high with about 281.5 million euro. Also, the imports from Indonesia reached a volume of 195 million euro. As a consequence, also the total trade volume reached an all-time high of 476 million euro. Unfortunately, our exports in the first half of this year decreased about 20%, but on the other side, import from Indonesia grew by 12% during the first 6 months of this year, due to our statistics. And also, in addition, there's also remarkable trade in services. The volume of the trade in services reached an amount of 63 million euro. And as it also been mentioned before, Austria is an interesting foreign direct investor in Indonesia. The official number is from the Austrian National Bank is 137 million euro, but as we heard before, the real investment number is really higher because many investments were made via third countries in Indonesia. As has also been mentioned before, there are several Austrian companies established in Indonesia in different sectors, and I think there is also a great potential for further improvement of our bilateral cooperation. There are a lot of promising areas, especially in the green technology area, including water and wastewater treatment, in the renewable energy area. Austria is one of our leading worldwide leader in renewable energy, in hydropower, in biomass, in biogas, in solar technology, and also in wind technology. And don't forget infrastructure, including urban infrastructure, tourism sector, and also the healthcare sector. As yesterday, Matsuneto told us, there was the summit of the government, including the social partners, due to the sanctions of the Russian sanctions of the European Union and the counter-sanctions of Russia. And one of our goals is to find new promising markets for Austrian companies. And one of these promising markets is, without doubt, Indonesia. And Indonesia is also belongs to this group of so-called next 11 countries. And in our strategy of the Ministry of Economy, the next 11 countries are one of our target regions and our target countries. But I think investment and trade cannot be a one-way street. So this is why I would also like to invite Indonesian companies to come to Austria and to invest in Austria. Austria can offer a lot also to Indonesian countries, especially Austria is a hub and a gateway to Central and Eastern Europe. And besides this function of a gateway function, Austria can also offer a highly motivated and qualified staff. We can offer incentive for research and development. We can offer a modern group taxation and a moderate taxation on profits. And last but not least, Austria has one of the highest quality of life. When you see this Mercer quality of life study, Austria ranks #1. So I'm looking forward to welcoming Indonesian companies in Austria, and I wish also today's forum, investment forum, every success and a fruitful outcome. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Vice President, Bapak Mahendra Siregar, the Chairman of the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Bureau Board, and also Mr. Franz Wessix, the Director General for Foreign Economic Relations of the Federal Ministry of Science, Research and Economy, and of course Mr. Hans-Jörg Hortnagels. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say something very short. It is indeed an honor for me to welcome you all here in this forum. This forum is one of the series of our programs to commemorate the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Austria and Indonesia. And in this regard, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and also appreciation to WKO for hosting this forum. I would like to invite Bapak Mahendra to present the update. Thank you.
Very good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to congratulate my friend, Ambassador Rahmat Budiman, who I think has been very instrumental to do his best to commemorate the 60th anniversary of Indonesia-Austria relations, which I think not too many Indonesians or Austrians know that we have been having such long-standing diplomatic relations, which of course should be a good stress for all of us. We have to fill in the long-standing relations with more substance, in particular economic, trade and investment relations. I would like to thank the WKO for jointly hosting this with the Indonesian Embassy, and It's really amazing. Not only I admire the building and the facility of this office, but I was briefed by the Director General, by Mr. Wesik, about Mr. Hurtnager, about how the Constitution put the chamber such important and strategic position vis-à-vis representing the Austrian business interests domestically in Europe, of course now more relevant internationally, including in the Asian region. I think this is something that Indonesia could also learn from Austria, how to do the thing, because it is important to leverage your national strengths in other regions to get the attention and the competitiveness of your business. And I also would like to thank Mr. Masnetter for your presence here, as well as Mr. Wesik for representing the federal ministry. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have sufficient time to explore about the whole potential of Indonesia, but let me just say some brief highlights of what happened in recent years in Indonesia, and also in the most recent weeks in particular. Now, is of course Indonesia is in the process of in the transition to have the new president. Despite we always been classified as the third largest democracy in the world based on population after India and the United States, but it is the fact that the new president-elect Jokowi is the largest ever in history of the world that has the mandate of 71 million direct voters. So whatever you would like to use the statistics, the third or the largest mandate president ever in the world, that Indonesia is in fact a vibrant and dynamic democracy. And of course that will continue because just for the record, at the time being, now we have a very heated debate of whether we should revise the proceedings of directly electing the governors and mayors that were decided 14 years ago to now being given back to the local parliaments. So while we celebrate this lively and dynamic democracy, but we never take things for granted, because there are things that need to be strengthened in the lively democratic environment itself. But that is, of course, for Indonesia and Indonesians to solve the problem. And of course, it's not only large in terms of democracy, but we are very diversified. As you could imagine, we are 34 provinces, as well as 500 cities and regions. So basically, we have election every other week in Indonesia. So yes, it is one thing to celebrate democracy, but it is another thing to have election every other week. But again, that's the reality of Indonesia. So for sometimes it's something to celebrate, but sometimes or some people it's still a big puzzle. But of course, Indonesia is also a story of successful and sustainable economic growth. As you could see, that we have been classified as the second fastest economic growth within the G20 members. It is quite surprising, not only for the international community, but for Indonesians, that Indonesia has become one of the G20 members. because we never thought we are that large. But actually, the most recent statistics ranked by the World Bank, well, I should, qualify in saying this by my most humble way, put Indonesia in terms of purchasing power parity GDP as the 10th largest economy in the world. Sometimes it's hard to believe, even for me, but that's the fact. And for us, as much as we understand that it's a big deal, but we also understand the remaining challenges that we still have to face going forward. And this is again to put the perspective properly, is that Indonesia is a 248 million population country and will approach 300 million by 2025, 2027. So that is, again, you could see as a large human capital, but if it is not managed well, it could become a burden and a challenge in itself. Especially if you put that in the context of 17 or 18,000 islands. Well, actually, we don't know precisely how many islands we own anymore. So sometimes we call them islands, sometimes we call it reefs or atolls, but it doesn't really matter because half of them are not habited anyway. And possibly 20% still don't have names. So if you have good Austrian names to provide, to give to Indonesian, we might consider it. And Indonesia now is $1.1 trillion economy in terms of GDP, but in terms of purchasing power parity, GDP is approaching 2.6 trillion. So that is why Indonesia is classified as the third, the 10th largest economy in the world, and with per capita income approaching $5,000. And this is the story of Indonesia, which I think is important to mention. While in the beginning we were the worstly hit by the financial crisis of Asia in the turn of the millennium in 1998, 1999, but we were the one that still been very effective even in weathering storm the global financial crisis of 2008. So I think it is very clear Indonesia is a case of resilience and sustainability. It's not the case of a short-term economic and investment yield, but it's a mid to long-term sustainable proposition. Compare that to other ASEAN countries, we are basically now 40% of ASEAN economy, Indonesia alone, while ASEAN has become more important recently and will become more integrated in the coming years. But I think the anchor of Indonesia in the economic way and size, as well as politically, become more critical. Because Indonesia, in its constitution and its foreign policy, always put very much active and independent positions against the global powers. Even in the most difficult circumstances in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in many parts of the world, Indonesia always plays that role. So within the G20, this is just to share with you because coincidentally I'm also the President's Sherpa to the G20. We can easily criticize one major power for item 1 and then criticize the other power for item 2 and item 3. So we are as independent as that, without having too much excessive luggage to consider. But Indonesia going forward is no longer Indonesia that centralized in Jakarta or Java island alone, despite it is still a very large economic proportion in total. But Indonesia will become the story of mid-sized and small middleweight cities. Because the facts are very clear, the large middleweights as well as small cities in Indonesia will grow faster than Jakarta in the next 15 years. That have been the proof of the last 10 years. So while large metropolitan cities like Jakarta and Surabaya are important, but the strength of Indonesia will become the outer islands and the small and medium cities. And then, of course, with regard to the investment, it's both the issue of perception as well as the reality. While I would not say that Indonesia is the most ideal and the most efficient way to welcome investors and investment from all over the world, but again, the perceptions as well as the attractiveness of Indonesia vis-a-vis international investors are very clear. From Japanese investors' perspective, this is the most recent updates. 500 largest investors of Japan consider Indonesia as the largest and most attractive investment destination. Mostly because, understandably, future growth potential of local market, as well as the inexpensive source of labor, but also, interestingly for Austria, I think, quite strong industrial cluster development in Indonesia. I think this is what is not well known internationally. And of course, we acknowledge that we have to face the issue of rising labor costs and then a very challenging infrastructure provision, as well as still some issues related to legal certainty. So I think we know what would be the opportunities as well as the remaining reforms that we have to carry on. But Indonesia is always the story of middle income group consumers' confidence. This is the story of why ASEAN is very important, because this is the survey done by, I understand, AC Nielsen. The ASEAN middle class will grow by 110% in the next 10 years. But that happens because 107% of growth of middle class in Indonesia. So Indonesia's growth alone is predominantly will determine the growth of ASEAN. As you could see from the graphic there on the top right, Indonesia's middle class growth will increase by 174%, followed by Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore behind it. And if you put that in the region perspective, it's the same. Why is that? It's because Indonesia is the fourth largest population, but the difference between Indonesia and China is that China is already approaching an aging society situation, while Indonesia will still enjoy the so-called demographic bonus until the year 2032-33, which means the increase of productive age population will be larger than the growth of the non-productive population age. So that would put Indonesia in the 15 to 17 years still demographic bonus perspective. And the bottom left graph shows you that now this is the survey done by another consultancy company, McKinsey. It says that we have now 45 million global consuming class that has potentially become to 85 million by 2020. In 2030, if we grow by 5 to 6% like now, we will have 135 million global consuming class. But if we can grow by 7%, we'll have 170 million global consuming class, which means 135 new global consuming class compared to today, which is 3 times. And this is what the survey says about Indonesia's potential condition. From 16 largest will be 7 largest in 2030, and the consuming class will increase from 45 to 135 or 170, as I mentioned earlier. And the population of the cities, including the small and medium-sized cities, is growing. And also the number of workers growing because of the young population situation. And the opportunity for consumer services, agriculture, fisheries, resources, and education services in Indonesia by 2030 itself will be around $1.8 trillion. Now, how to put that into the global regional perspective? This is the situation. This is a very interesting map, which some countries or some people in the world think now probably a new opportunity or new century for Asia. I have made use of this, this graph. Actually, the century of Asia is not new. We had that experience in 1700. In the 18th century, Asia's share of global GDP actually approaching 60%. So if we can have the ratio of Asia above 50% in 2050, it's more like history replay. It's not really a new history. So that is a very interesting situation. Having said that, even now, if you do not focus on the ratio of the GDP, but you focus on the contribution of GDP growth in the world, then Asia has contributed 70% of it. So that is the significance of the region. And I think that is why I would support the previous speaker's effort, as well as Austrian chambers, as well as the federal minister, strategic position to promote trade and investment relations with Asia even more. Now, these are the challenges, just briefly, because I'm aware I'm running out of my time. The macroeconomic stability is a challenge, as well as infrastructure investment and industrial relations. And these are just some issues that we think would be very important to ensure that the development and the growth story is not only continue but also sustainable. We have to address the issue of income distribution inequality. Despite we have been enjoying an increase of economic growth, but we are noting that the Gini coefficient, which measures the inequality of a country, is worsened in Indonesia in the last 5 years. That is one of concerns. The other one is, of course, we have to address the issue of wage system, which at the time being is still considered as not friendly to investment. And then the overall investment climate improvement needs to be synchronized and improved, especially with regard to the consistency of the regulations at the national, provincial, and local level. And then we are facing the trade balance deficit, as well as the fiscal deficit challenges, mostly because we give just too much subsidy for our retail fuel. Our fuel subsidy now is already occupying close to 18% of our total budget. So that is, of course, by any standard, not only not sustainable, but well, I think I would have great sympathy talking to Europeans about subsidy and things. I don't need to explore further. And on the financial system stability, it goes without saying, this is something that we are going to face going forward in the world. But in Indonesian standard, not only the stability, but also the importance of improving the accessibility of small and medium enterprises to banks and capital markets. Only 40% of Indonesians own bank account, and that is still very much show that Indonesia is a cash-based economy. So that is on one hand a challenge, but on the other hand is a big opportunity, especially for those who can provide solutions for small, medium transactions in the financial system. And then in infrastructure, I think the two delegations mentioned by the Vice President earlier really enjoy the traffic jam of Jakarta because of the condition of the infrastructure. Yeah, but it's always two sides of a coin. While of course sometimes you are frustrated with the traffic, but it's an opportunity for investment in infrastructure. And I think that goes without saying. And I understand that the Austrian government has a creative approach in combining the interests of the business investment as well as public-private partnership. And I think this is where we have to collaboratively and creatively promote the arrangements so that it would be more confidence for our both business investors communities to take sometimes very challenging and long-term yield infrastructure projects, as you understand. But having said that, we ourselves are committed, both the present government as well as the incoming government will get rid of the fuel subsidy and will reallocate most of them toward investment in infrastructure. I think that is very key, without which, of course, we ourselves will not be able to present a long-term sustainable economic strategy. On the labor issues I have mentioned earlier, we would like to provide more certainty with regard to the industrial relations as well as the wage system, among others by linking wage with productivity increase. If that happens, then of course the issue of the burden and the challenges of having 300 million population, especially most of them are young people, to become the great assets of human capital of Indonesia. And you just imagine if we can bring up the number of more people into the middle income group, that would become very much a more interesting story of Indonesia. And then this is what we are trying to do. Basically, we are going to move away not just to rely on investment and economic growth based on resources rich that we are already been enjoying in the last decades, but we would like to see more added value, higher value chain industry taking place in Indonesia, because we now even have to take the risk of the volatility of commodities prices in the world, again with the uncertainty in the global demand. So we understand the story of Indonesia's investment is the sustainable investment that would promote a more human capital intensive, higher value added industry rather than just relying on resources. With that, I thank everybody for this opportunity, and I hope this is a good another session for both sides to meet and discuss with each other, and then in any capacity that I would have in the future, I would be more than happy to promote further closer relations between the two business communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for this very interesting and also motivating presentation. Thank you for your invitation also to invest in Indonesia, and especially also in infrastructure area segment. I think we have much to offer. There are many areas where we can cooperate. I just think under the topic Smart City concept, where we try very successful to promote this abroad. I think what is energy, I think what is waste management. Like our Vice President says, in Vienna, 100% the waste is recycled. For the traffic jam, unfortunately, I don't think we're I also would like to mention that our embassy in Jakarta is one of the few embassies abroad we're having which is 100% eco-friendly. I don't have had the chance to listen it, but we will plan to welcome you and invite you to it. Thank you very much. So, as announced, we're going to continue with 3 presentations with the topics investment opportunities, ease of doing business in Indonesia, and the legal aspects, followed of course by a Q&A session.
Very good morning. Good morning to all of us. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Himawan Haryoga. I'm Deputy Chairman for Investment Promotion at the Indonesia Investment Coordinating Board, IKPM. As our chairman has already shared with you some comprehensive information on the global situation, Indonesian economic situation, as well as the investment opportunities, it makes me easier
on the one hand, because the topic that I will be covering, which is the investment opportunities, has already been covered to a large extent by our chairman. But let me add some information and as well as data on the policy side of the investment in Indonesia. I would like to share this with my colleague from BKPM, which is Mr. Tito Prasetyo, who will be touching on the interesting topic, which is ease of doing business in Indonesia. But let me first warn you that the government is not the best source of information to know about doing business in Indonesia, because we tend to be biased positively. But fortunately, we have speakers, resource persons from the private sectors, who will be talking about the legal aspect of doing business in Indonesia. And the speaker is here, Mr. Fabian, who will be speaking after both of us, as well as you will get the first-hand information from those who have been in Indonesia for quite some time. Those are the Austrian investors in Indonesia.
I'm responsible for my directorate is the business empowerment. So along with me, I brought some businessmen and businesswomen who are dealing with some product in Indonesia. They would like to find some partners here, and also they would like to invite or they will invest here. I hope that they will invest here, but actually I suggest them to invest here, or at least make some collaborations how to transfer technology. I know that, as they know that Austria is more developed than us. But in one part, maybe we are better than you, maybe. But last year and this year, I heard that more than 100 companies from Austria came to Indonesia. And I believe that during that time, they saw a lot of Indonesia. They see many opportunities to invest in Indonesia and how to make collaboration with Indonesian company. That's why that we are from the BKPM here come to again to know this WKO office. It's bigger than our office, but the same beautiful in our office. But that is my colleague here who will come to direct discussion with your companies.
Good day, everyone. Thanks so much for sharing the panel with me. The other presentation is about business. So now I'm going to talk about the legal side. Pak Chairman and Pak Chairman will share about some legal side, which are first that there are still legal concerns about doing business in Indonesia, and second, doing business in Indonesia is not easy but rewarding. These are the 2 points that I would like to emphasize on my presentation. This is the title of my presentation, ABC, Legal Investment in Indonesia. So before we go further, let me introduce myself. So there is some friends who haven't met yet. So let me make myself familiar to you by some introduction on my phone. So I come from Hanafi Pong & Partners. We have around 60 lawyers at our firm. This is our area of practice. We have 11 partners with us. This is a local firm, but we have a very strong and wide alliance overseas. We're part of Taylor Racing. This is one of the biggest law firms in Europe. Taylor Racing has 1,000 lawyers in 24 offices in the world. We are also a member of the Maritime Alliance. We see 170 law firms in 70 countries with 7,000 lawyers. So we are part of this big network. ABC in legals. So in doing business, you always engage 2 types of professionals. First for the financial and second for the legal. Financial advisor will help you making money. They will make you more money. But legal advisor will help you not to lose money. equally important. You can make money as much as possible, but if you have to lose money, then the first thing is nothing. Make sure you have a legal advisor with you. So ABC in legal, this is my title. I think Albert Einstein once said that logic takes us from A to Z. Imagination takes us beyond Z. So in legal not only about logic, but also imagination. So you can imagine how far we have to talk about legal A to Z. So this morning I just talked about A, B, C of legal. What is the ABC? First A, always. Be careful. All law firms, all lawyers, wherever they are, they will always give you this essence. Always be careful. By being careful, you can prevent from losing money. Your tax advisor, your FA will tell you how to make more money every day, but we will help you not to lose them. So always be careful. That's the bottom line of legal advice. So we just talk about ABC. The first component of A in Indonesia legal system is you must have agreements. Agreements are very important because when you do business, normally you do in partnership with local partners or even your partners in your home countries. A good agreements will ensure you a good profits. So it's very important for you to structure the business models and put them into proper set of legal documentations, which are mainly agreements. In the old days, people don't need contract, written agreements, they just trust one another. But this is the days where everything must be in writing. Agreements is the first element. Second is B, business line. This is related to what the earlier presentation gave you. In Indonesia, we have three types of investment. That first investment, they are open for 100% foreign ownership. Second, open with conditions. And third, closed investment. The business line will lead you to the type of investment you're going to do. Some investment in business line is something that open for 100%, then you can get 100% foreign ownership. But some conditions like the requirement for ownership, you must need special license from some agencies, location, very important. That's why you need to make sure that the first thing to do when you come to Indonesia is to set the business license, business lines that you're going to do. Sometimes when we see a business line, then we right away see a restriction. This is where legal will play some part. This is why I said in legal we not only talk about logic but also imagination. We create a creative legal structure that at the end will allow you to do the business. Sometimes some business line might be expressed in different way. That then insurance will allow you to do business with just different business lines. The C, court and compliance. Compliance is also now a serious issue in Indonesia. Now I have been assisting Japanese and American companies who have been having problems with FCPA in Indonesia. So they are subject to very high standard overseas. And of course also in Indonesia we have the anti-corruption laws. Be careful. Court also is a big problem if we have business everywhere, not only in Indonesia. Just like in military, a good military commander is not the one who wins the war, but he is the one who maintains peace. Also for litigation lawyer, good lawyer will not advise client or not to win clients over litigation, but a good lawyer will try client to avoid litigation. Stay away from litigation. Even it makes us as lawyers we lose money because we don't have client litigation. But everywhere, don't try litigation unless it is very important and very necessary. If you lose a car, you lose a ship, going to court will cost you a car. But some clients, they still proceed with court litigation because money is not everything. I have a Japanese client who then have to lose some money for legal costs, but they put their reputation, good names above all. So money is not everything. So in that case, they then ask us to go to court for legal cost. So this is the ABC in legal investment in Indonesia. So I try to make a simple presentation because life is too short to be too serious, isn't it? It's fun. With the ABC, it gives you some, not a knowledge, but a perspective. Because knowledge you can get from Google, but perspective, something that you need someone who has been there, dealing with the real issue, and give you the solution. Okay, now we are going to the more details. This profile Indonesia. I think you can do investment in Indonesia by having a joint venture with local partners, or you come 100%. It depends on the business line of the business. There are 3 corporate forms. First, Indonesian companies, PT. It's a private company, or we call it PT TBK. This is a public listed company, or you just open a RO. The KPM is the agency who will give you some initial investment licenses in this reform. It's the regulatory framework. We have on the top is the investment laws. This is the umbrella agreement for investments. The details have been presented by the early presentation. We have also the negative risk of investment, as mentioned before. We do have also the BKM regulation that gives you the details about how to see the mechanics of investment in Indonesia, and sectoral regulations. The sectoral regulation is something very important. It is my experience that I have a client in fishery business. The investment law allows 80% foreign, if I'm not mistaken. But then when they buy their ship, the Ministry of Transportation requires local majority. So these are kind of things that we must be smart. When you get a license from BKPM, it doesn't mean that you can be successful in making through all the business all the way, because you still have to deal with sectoral agency like the Ministry of Transportation. So now my clients that have to restructure the shareholding, even they already obtained their BKPM license, 80-20, 80 for foreign, 20 for local, but because of the requirements from the MOT, then they have to do some transfer of the majority to the local partner. Authorities, yeah, the KPM, the OJK for the financial, central bank also related to the land office, very important, especially for those in acquiring plantation. Land office is quite technical. I've once seen a friend from a very big law firm, they miss to include a kind of local land office license when the client acquire land in Indonesia. So this then becomes a permanent effect of the investment because they ignore the importance of the land office at the time. We also have the custom office, and then the gas for the oil and gas, for the stock exchange and some sectoral authorities. Local authorities are also important because they are the one that will be the front line of investment in Indonesia. These are the regulations that provide about investment rules in Indonesia. The Constitution and the sectoral regulations. The down below is the primary laws and regulatory authorities. We deal with the IPOC, foreign exchange with the Bank of Indonesia, capital market with the stock exchange, company X with the Ministry of Laws. In Indonesia, even we already have the online system for establishing a company, but we still need approval from the government. Unlike some countries in the world, when we establish a company, we just do a filing, one-side action from the companies, from the founders. But in Indonesia, we still need approval from the minister. Even this process is not cumbersome. That's all for now, so I think I will go with the flow in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
So thank you much for these presentations. Before the coffee break, we have foreseen a question and answer session, and I would like to invite you for your questions to the three speakers. So are there any questions from your side? You don't have to invest in Indonesia. you can ask anonymously, it's also possible. Okay, fine. If there are no questions, so of course all is available during the coffee break. And I would like to have your coffee break now. We continue 11, 11:30. Thank you very much.